Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
So it seems like we're missing something big musically to talk about this week. Is there something going
Uh,
on that we missed?
there's isn't it like Grammy season or something like that
The
around
The
now?
Grammys? I think you're right. Is that still a thing? And welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast where each week we two guys get together and we talk about records. And it could be a no-win situation this week, Steve. I have a feeling we're going to get fact-checked and or grumbled at when we start talking about the Grammys this time around. But it is what it is.
It's going to be two old guys talking about records and why isn't our artist ever nominated?
Doggone it. Well, in the meantime, my name's Jim and I own a record store.
And I am Steven. I got a record collection.
And as of the recording of this week's episode, we are just about heading into the Grammys. By the time some of you watch and or listen to this, the Grammys will have just happened or will have recently happened. And I'm just wondering how big of an impact that is going to have upon your life, your collection, because I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on mine.
I know I probably won't watch again. I sometimes the live performances can be interesting, but anymore, my wife and I, who's that? Who's that?
Like,
Like,
what
oh,
the hell is that? I
that's
don't know
right.
what's going on
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Two,
Then by
two
that
old
point,
guys.
we start talking about getting off of our lawn.
Yeah, my
Hey,
God, yes.
speaking of two old guys, before we get into everything this week, I don't know if you caught it. There was a comment on last week's episode on the YouTube side of things, the punk rock that we did. And it
Uh-huh.
cropped, the comment cropped up, not on the episode, but on some of the shorts. I started making shorts, by the way, Steve.
Yeah.
On those, this comment cropped up on one of the shorts and it said, two middle-aged men talking about punk rock is the least punk rock thing I've ever seen. So, and the thing is, you think, okay, I think the first big punk album I bought, well, we talked about the Cramps, but definitely the Dead Milkmen. I was in my
Mhm.
early 20s when I got that. So, okay. Was
I
I
I
punk
was
rock
also
then?
Yep, I was also in my early 20s when I got my first punk rock albums. I'm just happy that I got labeled as middle-aged. I mean, I'm pretty
You're creeping. I guess I
That's
am too.
right.
I'm almost there as well. So thank you,
Oh,
dear commenter, for calling us middle
yes.
aged,
No
and
kidding.
not two old geezers talking about records. We're gonna have to
Yeah,
change the
yeah.
name of the podcast in this later this year. I think when my AARP kicks in, and it actually
Uh-huh.
has. Now that I think about it, so
Hey, don't worry. If eventually you start getting the letters from the mortuaries,
oh great,
"Hey, come check us out." And,
hey,
yeah, okay.
offering 2-for-1 deals.
Yeah.
People are dying to get in. Sorry.
Yes.
All right, enough of this ridiculousness. We're going to get talking about the Grammys, and I know that it's an odd subject. A lot of collectors are like us, I think. I mean, there's younger collectors, obviously,
Yeah.
who are very interested in this. And spoiler alert, I'm going to just say this right up front, and I mean no offense, but I'm also not going to apologize for it. I don't really care about the Grammys,
Yeah.
but that's just me.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Same here.
But
Yep.
that being said, we will go through our collections and we have kind of pulled out the Grammy award winners. I was surprised with a few
Yes.
of them and some I'm not, but it's good to see some stuff in there that we know about, at
Exactly.
least.
Yeah. Yes.
Stuff we're
Back
familiar
back when
with.
we were young. Yes, back
Yes.
when we were young and we found it exciting and couldn't wait to watch it.
Yep. Before we were middle-aged.
Yes.
So we'll get to all of that here in just a couple of moments. And I also want to talk just some Grammy history because there was a couple of interesting things I noticed when I was going through the old lists of Grammy award winners that I think was interesting. We'll see what you guys think on this as well.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, as we do each and every week, we talk about our most recent pickups, the additions to our collection, as this is a vinyl community podcast, and folks love showing that stuff off. What's this one? Oh, what's that? I'll tell you about that in a second, Steve. So,
All
um,
right.
did I catch one of your channel's videos where you said you made a return trip to the Honey Hole?
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh-oh.
yep,
Uh-oh.
not good, not good.
How'd you do
Well,
then?
it was a lot. It
Oh
was,
my.
I was able to carry it in on one trip, so that's the good thing.
Well,
Um,
were you carrying it in a bag or a large
yeah,
crate? That's the
a
question.
very large bag.
All right.
Well, the first one though is not from there. I had ordered it. This is the very first Caius album. I guess I've showed a couple Caius. The recording on one was awful. This is the first one. It's Blues for the Red Sun, which is considered the best of the Caius albums. And it's really good. The sound quality's it's still a little muddled, but that's just Caius. They didn't have tons of money either, so their production team wasn't like probably didn't get a Grammy for best production. It was really good. I enjoyed that. There's only one Air Caius album I don't have, and I'm okay.
You're okay with
I
that.
don't need it. Yeah, because if I buy that, then I'll be a completist. I don't want that, so I'm just going to bypass it.
You don't want that tag.
No, 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 don't want that. So here's some of the stuff from the honey hole. We're not going to go through all of it, but the very first Amboy Dukes
Very
on
cool.
mainstream. This is an original press, and it is just extremely clean. A lot of these records look like they weren't ever played. I mean, you could tell this person was a record collector at a very early age and taking care of his stuff. Extremely nice. This, not a first press of the Seeds. It came out that same year, 1966, but they did includes the hit single.
Okay.
So that, it's not the first press of it, but it is from 66. And guess what? There's no scratches on it.
Beautiful as well.
It's clean. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when did you see a Seeds with no scratches on the dang thing? So I was floored when I saw this, and yeah, $35 for mono. It's just incredible
That's not bad.
price. No, this is one I've been looking for. Kansas Left Overture. Used to have it in the collection. My first Kansas album, my favorite Kansas album. This is a repress from the aughts. It's fine. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's really nice. My only thing is it does not have the original inner sleeve that had the lyrics, the pictures of the people. So guess what? If I find a crappy one, I can just buy that. It doesn't matter. I don't
Yep.
need the vinyl because this is pristine.
Cool.
This was a neat one. The very first ZZ Top, and this is an original press. And there is just slight ring wear here. This thing is pristine, Jim. This is I thought about getting this on the Rhino because I have a copy that I bought, not in good shape. There again, not a single scratch on this thing, nothing, and has the original paper sleeve in here, just in beautiful condition. It's in the shrink wrap from again first press, so. Yeah, incredible.
That's a sign, like you said, that person was taking care of their collection.
Absolutely, he had true love of it. This one you probably enjoy. This is Jade Warrior's second album. It has the timing. I mean, for what to play on here. If you're a
Cool.
radio's
Yep.
recommended cut.
Timing strip.
Yep, timing strip, and it's a promo.
And not only that, Steve, it's a Vertigo label.
Vertigo
label
swirl, yes.
Very cool.
Our friend Michael, when I would go out with him in Detroit, he goes, "Yeah, them Jade Warriors. You find those early ones, you can get Vertigos on there." And I kind of like that. Actually, I like this album so far. I've only listened to side one. It was really rocking. Yeah,
and that's kind of a jazz fusion, but more on the rock side.
Yeah, exactly. Some will throw it into prog. Again, was clean as a whistle. Wow. Absolutely beautiful condition. This is another interesting one. We did our AM Gold. Mm-hmm. I thought I had this because it was the very first song I heard on AM radio in our bedroom when my brother got an AM alarm clock, Blue Swede, and there it was. But was really cool on this, Jim, is it pulled out here. Here we go. Is it came with a photo.
Oh, promo slick is what those are called.
A promo, yep. And there's the sheet
And a letter.
from yeah, and a letter from EMI about this album.
So
I
that
didn't know that was
was
in there.
a promotional album, but not a promotional pressing, is basically
Yes.
that's what that means.
Uh-huh.
That's very cool to have those
Okay.
additionals.
It was. I mean, medium on this thing goes for $20 now on Discogs. Can you believe that? $20 for this, where you used to find it in the bargain bins. This one was $12, and it's clean. I mean, it's so clean and had all that extra stuff in there. So that's the problem with this honey hole.
I
It
think
really is good.
that's testament to the to a movie that included it, a very popular movie in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, absolutely.
It helps
It
propel these things.
skyrocketed.
Yep, the same thing we saw with that TV show and Kate Bush.
Yeah. Yep. Um, John Prine's, I think his fourth album, Bruised Orange. I'm not a huge John Prine, but I know this is considered one of his best, and I bought a couple others, and I'm enjoying him more than I used to like him. You just taking time to get into it. Too often you can thrill through things, and now I'm just really working to figure things out.
I'm that way
Couple
with
other,
Prine. Yeah, I'm that way with John Prine too. I mean, his big popular, his biggest album, the one with the bale of straw on the front. I think is that self-titled. I'm trying to
his
remember.
first, yep,
Yeah, his
self-titled.
first.
It is.
Yeah, we've had that come through the store 2 or 3 times, and I know folks just absolutely rave. It sells almost instantly. We had a nice copy come through, earlier last year, and I gave it a listen, and I gave it another listen, and it's good, but I just didn't think it's just not me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Howlin' Wolf sings the blues.
Oh my, and the
Yeah,
cover.
yeah, and the cover. Yeah, isn't that cover something? The vinyl is not in good condition. This is scratched up. There's some major scratches in there. It plays through. There is some pops. The price though was over. It was down fairly low. Again, it plays totally through, and the covers. It's there's split there, but I mean, who sees this stuff? You don't ever see it. So
The Howlin'
that was
Wolf ones, especially, I've found here at the store over the years when we get those early Crown record, the stuff that's on the
uh-huh.
Crown label. I don't think that was a tremendously high quality label, and I forget who they ended up becoming a subsidiary of, but it was not known for being super high quality, I believe. And I've had that one come through here a couple of times also, and it was just wasn't a great copy, but still kind
Yeah,
of a very cool piece of history to have with that one.
it is. It is. And I love the blues. And the final one is Orgy and Rhythm from Art Blakey. It originally came out in 57. This is a 64 press of it. Very, very percussion oriented. Off the Blue Note. Again, it was such a great price because they don't sell jazz there, so they just
Mhm.
cut their prices down to just they wanted to move this out. And it's talked to the owner, and she just goes, "They've really made their money on this collection. As you know, you get the right collection, you can make it, and
Mhm.
and they still have a lot to bring out and show." So that's there was some other stuff I bought, but that's good enough.
Well,
And yeah,
when you show up at the store and they say, "Well, we don't sell a lot of jazz," and you go in there going, "Oh," they're gonna
yeah,
think about that now. It's like
yeah,
there comes that
exactly.
Steve guy again.
Yeah, there's the jazz and blues. Go mark that stuff up real quick
But
before he looks.
that's a
It's
good
really
batch.
I there's so much I would like in there, especially in you look in the hard rock vein that I don't have from the 70s and 60s, but it all comes down to either food or a record. And
Rent,
so
food, record,
yeah.
interesting. But I'm glad you found a neat place out there that you can go to. But again, you're kind of letting the secret out of your honey hole, and
Yeah, I pretty much have, and so I don't know how many record collectors out here watch my videos, so I might be okay still.
yeah, there you go. Hopefully, they
Yeah,
don't do a lot of mail orders. What you're saying?
yes, they don't. Luckily, yes.
Well,
What about
cool.
you, Jim? What's your pickups?
Well, I had a few new ones this week, but I'm gonna start off with an old one. I picked up oddly enough, a punk EP from a group called The Embarrassment, and I don't know if
Uh
you've
huh.
ever heard of these guys before, but it's interesting. These guys are from, I believe, Kansas, so it's Midwest punk from the early '80s. they got their start in 79 and really only lasted till about 83. And as far as vinyl goes, they didn't do a whole lot on vinyl until the 90s with some compilation coming back. But this one is called the Embarrassment EP, and it just has a few songs on here. It looks like, yeah, just 5 songs. Celebrity at a Party, Elizabeth Montgomery's Face, I'm at Don Juan, Don't Choose the Wrong Song, and Wellsville. And the only reason I knew about this group was going back to my Napster days, when I may have spent some time on Napster looking for music way back when, and I came across a cover that they did from, and it was a CD only. And trust me, I've looked for this on vinyl, but it's only ever existed on CD. A release of theirs called Blister Pop, where they did a cover of the Chambers Brothers' Time Has Come Today. And it's just such a fantastic version of that I was always kind of in the back of my head. So I saw this Embarrassment pop, picked it up, and it is similar in style. And it's, Discogs calls it art rock punk from 1981. Okay. And I'm not going to argue with that. It's not straight up punk, but the vocals are also, they're difficult to get used to. I did find a couple cuts from I did find a couple cuts from these guys to go into the Spotify playlist this week, so you can check that out. And I'm also going to include that cover that I talked about, because it was on there too. It's not on this, which was disappointing, but this stuff still, it's fun, neat, quick punk. And oddly enough too, maybe it's just the rarity of this, but this thing floats between $40 and $70 on Discogs for a good copy of it. Yeah. And it's just an EP, so it's fun. So onward to the rest of the stuff. Okay, I finally, I don't want to say caved. I was just kind of holding off because this one was so hard to get here at the store when it first came out, and it was delayed and everybody was asking for it. And when it finally came in, I got 4 or 5 copies, but everybody had fulfilled. And this is the new one from The Cure. Their Songs of a Lost World. So I've had about 4 copies of this floating around in the store since we finally did get our supply, and it sells. So I decided to open one up for quality control purposes, and I did get a copy of the marbled vinyl one, that version of it, and it's decent. I mean, it's most I think you talked about this. You got this as well, didn't you?
Yeah,
and
I did.
I will agree with you. It sounds a heck of a lot like the old Cure. Just a little quieter and a little slower, but it still has, and it's tough to say that the Cure is a little slower, but this one, it feels it. I mean, it's a good album, and I'm glad I opened one up. I'll give this lots of listens in the store while I sell the other copies. And when that's done, I'll make a call whether that stays in the collection or not. But I do enjoy it a lot more than I enjoyed some of the mid-range Cure, where they got a little too poppy.
Yeah.
Their 90s stuff. Sure. So that's a throwback to the 80s. You still sold on that? Are you happy you got that one?
Yeah, I'm happy. I said it wasn't my top album of last year. Some people had it ranked right up as the best album, and I didn't think it was that, but it made it into my top 10. And that was like out of 50 albums. So
that's cool. Yeah, good. And then finally, these are very recent releases as of the Friday before we recorded this, of older albums. And I have been a Samantha Fish fan for a while. We saw Samantha play here in our area down at the Freeland Blues Fest back in 2019, and just very, very impressed with her as a blues guitarist and a singer, very energetic on the performance side of things. And so I think I've got pretty much all of her other albums with the exception of her country one. I never picked that one, the Belle of the South, I think. Belle of the West. Okay. I'm trying to remember there too. But this is Samantha Fish's Runaway. Now, this was her very first solo album that was initially released, let me look at this, in 2011 on compact disc only. So as she had gone through her career, she's gotten more poppy, especially with one of her, not her last album she did with a collaboration with Jesse Dayton, I believe, which was just straight up hard-hitting guitar blues. But there was an album called Faster, which she had a different producer. It had a very definitive pop feel to it, but still slide guitar blues underlying through that. This, going all the way back to her origin story, if you will, is another great, just really, just very cool guitar blues. And this is her as she's starting off. She's young, she's hungry, and she is really playing her heart out on this. So it's some great, just slide guitar blues with this, and finally happy to see that this early stuff of hers was back on vinyl. So I'm enjoying the heck out of that. And it is on nice red vinyl. Let me show you that off real quick. Nice little translucent red. to show us off there. And then at the same time, this one had been reissued a couple of times, but it's never been in my line of sight to order from our distributors. But this is Wild Heart, which was released in 2015. And I forget exactly which press this one is, but I think they did a repress last year of it. This is her second or third, I think it's her third album. I'll have to go back and look. Still a very good blues album, although I feel it was a bit softer, a little jazz flavoring in a couple of songs here and there, but still just some good solid blues. And I don't want to say, just like you, I'm not I guess maybe I'm close to being a Samantha Fish completist. Mine is
One
that
short.
one short, and I don't think I'm going to go that route because I've listened to it and was never too keen on that particular sound. As she had gone through, and I think we did our live update here from the store on our YouTube channel yesterday, and Chance stopped on and asked about Samantha Fish and where a noob should start with that. And there's a couple of other ones that she's got. One that's got a very jazz oriented, like a lounge jazz, but still everything's got that slide guitar blues that I would equate most with like a Stevie Ray Vaughan style, or even a George Thorogood, that kind of heavy guitar blues, but with with Samantha Fish singing in this case. But there are a couple of albums of hers that go. Chills and Fever is the one I was thinking of, that's got a very, very jazz-oriented theme running throughout it, lounge jazz. The Belle of the West, I think, is the country-ish one, and then Faster has a very pop-oriented feel on it. So I don't know where she's going to go next. We'll have to kind of see. You know, she did that collab, I think, with Jesse that goes back to that guitar bass, but we'll see if she goes back to the real harsh blues if she does another solo effort sometime in the future.
So I'm holding off on that one Caius album, so I'm not a completist, and you're going to do that with Samantha Fish, so you're not. Okay.
Yep. We're gonna do that, so you can't call us completists on either of those. Let's then talk about They Might Be Giants, Steve.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Careful there.
Rush.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've got some news on that hopefully to share in a week or so hang on for that one, by the way. So if you folks are curious about some of the music that we talked about in our pickups and some of the music that we will be talking about here in a couple of moments, you can look for the Spotify playlist where we will put selected cuts from the albums that we're talking about. That thing goes into the description of both the Spotify podcast episode, the episode description. Just look for the Spotify playlist in there, as well as the YouTube channel. We've got that playlist on there. And I think I put that up on the Facebook page as well. So if you've got, sometimes I think, Steve, it really depends on what we're talking about. The playlist can be anywhere between a half an hour to 2 hours long.
Yeah.
And I think that this particular playlist is going to be a long one because most of the stuff that we're going to talk about and we have talked about is out there for us to include. So yeah, if you got some time to kill after watching or listening to the podcast, kick over to that playlist and check it out. And you can see whether you agree with our assessments of the music.
That's right. Put it on as you're driving. It's just like nonstop radio going there. Good
There we
stuff.
go. So as of the recording, as we mentioned of this, Steve, the Grammys are forthcoming, but depending upon when you watch or listen, they would have just happened or have happened very recently. And as I said at the start of the episode today, I pay attention. Now, I know I'm going to catch some heat for this. So you own a record store. You're supposed to be up on all the latest trends and knowledgeable about all of today's music. And my answer to that is yes, I am supposed to be that. Sometimes I'm not. And I can do that as well without having to sit and watch a bloviated award show. And just to kind of preface this, Steve, I don't think that I really have ever watched the Grammys. I was trying to think back. I may have caught a few things here and there. You know, in my younger days, I may have watched one or two, but I don't think that I've ever very consciously sat. And it's not just the Grammys. Okay. I am just not a fan of awards shows, whether it be the Oscars or the Emmys or, just about anything that you would kick in there. I just don't get into award shows. I enjoy the artists and I enjoy their work. I want them to entertain us. I don't seem to have an interest, though, in them patting themselves on the back about which of them has entertained us the most in a given year. So, and that's just me.
Yeah. So you missed the speech. You really love me. You really, really love me.
You really
missed
love
that.
And so I'm going to kick that out by saying, as we go through this, we seem to be picking up a bit of fact checkers here and there in the comments, which is great because I don't know everything. I don't know how you feel about it. I'm there.
Oh
I
no,
will,
I don't.
I will misspeak often and sometimes on
Yeah,
purpose. No, I'm kidding. But
yeah.
I have a feeling we're gonna be in for it a little bit. I don't know a lot of Grammy history. I looked a few things up here
Mhm.
and there for today's episode, but it's just not my forte. Which
Yeah.
again, owning a record store, it should be, but it just isn't. So there you go.
Yeah, now for me, when it came to the Grammys, I used to get excited about it.
Mm.
I would watch them, into the 70s, into the 80s. And, I loved seeing the performers come out. These are people, oh, that's what they look like. Here they are. And to hear them perform. And I found it very, very exciting. Into the 90s, I began to drift, and into this century, I don't watch anymore. A lot of it's just, getting older, and so what they're playing is more popular, which it was back in the 70s and the 80s. If you look at our list, that's just popular music. That's what
Yep.
was on the radio, and it's still the case, but now maybe we're a little, "Well, but that's not our music," and
Yep.
that's okay. I mean, it doesn't I mean, we have our music, and at the time, our parents or other people go, "Well, boy, who listens to that stuff?" Well, and now it's our turn to go, "Oh, who listens to that stuff?"
So, in looking at some of the history of the Grammys, and this is where again I was really kind of rusty. In fact, let me call a page up here, and we'll take a look at this together as we go through.
Yeah.
This is Wikipedia. I tried going to the Grammy page, Steve, but it's really difficult to navigate. I sent you
Yeah.
that link, and I don't know if you felt the same way on that too. But
Yeah, it was. But,
and
you know,
the
they
go
were
ahead.
going to be called the Eddie. They were going to call him the Eddie at the start
Mhm.
after Ed Thomas Edison. And so the very first
Okay.
thought was, it'll be the Eddies. And, that would have been good for Eddie Munster. But they, they decided to do a poll, a mail-in survey, a mail-in poll, and over 300 chose Grammys as the thing to be
Well, that's
instead
cool.
of
So
Eddies.
for today's discussion, Steve and I have kind of decided to kind of stick this with the Grammy Award for Album of the Year because
Hmm.
I think if we got into this too deep, there are so many subcategories, and some of these have changed so much over the years that we would fill our hour up and then some with stuff
Yeah.
that we really don't know about.
Yeah, it does. The very first Grammys had 28 categories, and by 2012, it was up to 109 categories. I mean, you talk about a show. Well, now they have the show in different places,
Yep.
because a lot of people don't make it on TV. But now it's down to 78, which is very manageable, I
Oh,
guess.
heck
So,
yeah.
yeah,
And in looking at this, so it's the artists or bands with multiple wins and this again, not artist of the year, not song of the year, not subcategory. This is just album of the year that we're going to kind of concentrate on today. But
hmm,
look who's right up at the top there with Taylor Swift with 7 nominations and 4 wins, and Frank Sinatra right behind her with 8 noms and 3 wins. That's
Well, back in the
interesting.
60s, they weren't going for it was older people, voting on this. So, well,
Yep.
Frank Sinatra, forget these other guys, the Rolling Stones or Kinks. Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. And rounding out this list of those with the multiple wins, we go down to Paul Simon, Stevie Wonder, George Harrison, John Lennon, U2, and then Adele coming down.
Yeah.
So those are the only ones. Now, I don't see this in the stuff that we're looking at right now, but I did run across one that said that the artist with the most nominations was Beyonce.
Yeah.
And she's not had, I mean, she's got some Grammys under her belt, but not an album of the year, I believe. So
No, she's
99
not
overall.
yet.
And
And she's up again this
she's
year
up again this year. Yep. So well, we'll
for
see. And
country
again,
western.
yep. Which yes. So that's going to be a tough for her to beat out other traditional country western artists, and we'll see, I guess, where that goes. But again,
Did you
I'll pay
sell that
attention.
one? Did you
We
sell
had
that one in the
we had a
store?
couple copies in the store when it was new, and I had some folks asking for it, and I think I had one or two others. They went and nobody asked for it. They were on back order, so I never refilled it, and nobody has
Okay.
asked for it since. So maybe I'll grab one down the line and we'll see what happens.
I remember back in my Kmart days, man, when the Grammys would come, they would just load us up. Whatever the album of the year would, we'd
Yep.
get just stacks of these, and they're ready to go to whoever wanted. Generally, the next day, people would come in and start buying them.
Well, and that's yeah,
Not all the time.
it's a great tool for marketing and getting that out there. And
Mhm.
our distributors do the same thing. Every year coming up toward the when the nominations are announced, they start putting out solicitations saying, "Here's your Grammy list for this year. Here's the albums. Here's the artists. Here's the songs. Here's trying to give us a little bit more info on what we should be carrying, should people be tremendously interested in there." And that does, in this day and age, I think it generates a little bit of interest, but I don't think it's anywhere near what the streamers get off of the Grammy interest.
Yeah,
The physicals will see some residual, I think, but nothing like it used to be, like you said, where they come barreling
exactly.
into Kmart looking for it. So
Yep.
going back again to the history on this, Steve, just the album of the years. Starting in 1959, you get Henry Mancini, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra for two different albums, and Van Cliburn with Henry Mancini winning that very first one for album of the year.
Which I
But
used to have that one.
it's not in the list today, though, is it? It
No,
went down with the flood.
no, no.
I'm not going to go through everything here, but one thing I want to point out, Steve, as I look at this entry page, that in the very early Grammy winners for album of the year, you have album and artist, and then into the 1960s, they kind of break that up: album, artist, and then production team. Even though that production team is still pretty much blank until you get to the mid 60s. But as we go further from the 60s to the 70s, we start seeing, okay, the album, the artist. So let's say 1971, Bridge Over Troubled Water, Simon and Garfunkel, and then the producers of Simon and Garfunkel and Roy Haley. But as let's kick forward in time a lot, Steve, and shall we go all the way into the 2000s? And
Yeah.
this is where I think it starts to get a little watered down. You get to some of the Beyonce stuff or Kendrick Lamar. I think one of the biggest differences we see in here is just the sheer number of people. So John Batiste won in 2021 with a large contingent of people, but by far you get to the likes of Kanye West. I mean, there's 100 names on here that are all listed in this Grammy. This becomes more of a collaborative marketing campaign
Yeah.
or creation campaign than anything. Same thing with Justin Bieber. I'm astounded that we've gone from an artist and an album title and maybe one producer or two people working on it to just a crew of hundreds putting this out every year.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know. To me, you take that okay, it's creativity. Yes, the artist has some allure, the artist has some draw. The main producer has some skill putting in there, but at the end of the day, you got that many people working on this. This smacks of like a corporate creation of some sorts rather than just a piece of music.
Well, Jim, it's just this. You get a Grammy, you get a Grammy, and you get a Grammy. Everyone, Grammys for everyone. And
Everybody gets
suddenly,
one.
here's 100 of them. Go ahead, grab.
And,
Fun.
if that's what it takes, cool, good on them. And if that's, I just find it, I guess, interesting is the polite word I'll use right here, that it takes that many people to craft a hit album nowadays rather
Yeah.
than just somebody who's a great writer, somebody who's a great performer and singer with a great band behind them. We're going to put this out, and here we're going to earn our accolades with this, and it's going to win a Grammy, versus, okay, let's craft this and we're going to market research the heck out of this to make sure that we get the maximum impact, blah, 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 blah. Sorry.
I wonder if they're going to have a Grammy coming up for Best AI song and
Well,
Best Auto Tune song.
let's those are fantastic suggestions. And once our AI overlords overtake us, I think that they will probably add that in and just put all the human the human nominees to a
Right.
subcategory.
Yeah, we don't need
The
them.
the award for best AI artist of the year goes to Hal. I'm
Yes.
sorry, Steve. We can't play that for you now.
Yes.
That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yep. The world's a changing.
Yep, and here we are going to be stuck with our turntables listening to old Pink Floyd records.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that struck me too, Stephen. Looking through this history, there's some really good albums throughout the '60s and '70s and '80s, and ones that I know were big into the 90s and 2000s. But what I did not see in this album of the year was a Led Zeppelin, was a Pink Floyd, was a Rolling Stones record. Anything from the 80s, you get a Def Leppard or an AC/DC. How many records have these guys sold? And I'm sure that, yes, they're in the hard rock category. Great. Good for them. But album of the year is supposed to be that pinnacle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jethro Tull did get best heavy metal, so I
They
mean,
did.
this the Grammy did have their, they did have their finger on the pulse of what's
No,
going on.
no, they didn't. I do remember that year. That year I was paying attention because I was still working radio. And the Jethro Tull win was for a heavy metal album or hard rock album
Hmm.
that was
It'd be
not a hard
Metallica.
rock. Yeah, they beat Metallica. And it was like, oh my. And I know that I do remember because I was covering the outrage on the hard rock community side that
Uh-huh.
Jethro Tull comes in from the 60s and wins best hard rock. And I don't even remember what it was, like Crest of a Knave. I think it was Crest of a Knave actually, which is not
It
a
was
heavy metal album.
no, it's just a bunch of old Grammy guy people wanting to go,
Oh, it's
well, let's
Jethro
just give
Tull.
them one. Well, I don't have to listen to it, do I?
So, but again, the lack of, and this is just me being a grumpy old middle-aged record store dude saying, you would think that because of the impact that Led Zeppelin had culturally, or the Beatles are on the list. I'll give them that, but no Rolling Stones, no Pink Floyd, no Rush. And I think Rush I went back and looked, they'd been nominated for 3 and may have only won 1 in a subcategory. And the Rolling
Yeah.
Stones had some wins. I think they got a Best Blues album at one point in time. But again, you're talking these major acts that have had huge cultural impacts through the 60s and 70s. And they're like, yeah, you're cool.
But they were FM,
Yep.
more FM oriented, while the Grammys, if you look, was more AM oriented in so many cases. Not always. The Beatles' White Album was not or Sgt. Pepper's was
Yep.
not AM. But when you look into like the 70s, the Stevie Wonders, the Rumors, and all that, you can really see this more AM orientation. But at that time, who listened to AM radio was still kind of king.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And now, nowadays it's obviously switched to a lot of, well,
Hmm.
the taking in account the streaming success or the video success. Video killed the
Yeah.
radio star if you want to back in the 80s. But let me call this page back up here, and let's look at this year's. That's the other thing too, is they've really opened up the number instead of just 4 or 5. There's a lot of nominees. So we've got Charlie XCX for Brat. This is the 2025. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, as you mentioned. Jacob Collier for DJ's Volume 4. Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft. Andre 3000, New Blue Sun. Chapel Roan, Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet is on here. And then, of course, Taylor Swift with one of the versions of her Tortured Poets on there.
One of our versions.
Well, that's the one that had 4 or 5 versions on there. So
Yeah.
again, I'm familiar with all these albums. These albums sell in the store. We have moved plenty of them through there, but personally and as a collector, those don't interest me. And maybe that's on me.
Well, no, it's just it comes down to they're trying to keep the music more on what a younger audience really is interested in and
Yep.
keep that exciting, which I do understand. If we want an older one, that's going to turn into lifetime achievement.
There you go. And, we've had the same conversation about Record Store Day and the titles that show up in the drops for the,
Mhm.
or for the Record Store Day titles. They're trying to entice that younger audience to come in with the Chapel Roan and the Billie Eilish and bring them in so that so record stores can sustain themselves when folks like you and I are put out to pasture.
Yeah. Yes,
And
very much so.
that's pretty
It's
much
important.
that's the give on the whole music industry, is that they want to be self-sustaining, so they've got to pay attention to these artists that are appealing to younger folks and not just the Led Zeppelins and the Pink
Yeah.
Floyds and stuff that we can get on vintage.
And their music is selling. That's it. That's
Yes.
the other thing. I mean, it really is. When you look at where are your sales at, it's in the Beyonce, it's in the Taylor Swift. So we
Yep.
have all these albums that we really love. A lot of my best, no one's ever heard of. So I mean, they're obscure. But our record collecting tastes have also changed. That we dig into all that different stuff.
Yeah, not to mention too, and we've had this discussion about these older artists that were around in the 60s and 70s putting out new music that just is not not great. So
Yeah,
sorry guys, you were hot, now you're not, I suppose. But
yeah. But
again,
even the
that's
Cure
just
wasn't
me.
up. Yeah. I
No,
mean, the Cure
yeah.
didn't get theirs. They
Nope.
didn't pop in there.
And the same thing, that the one that surprised me this year, and I think that he may be in a subcategory, is Billy Strings. And I know he has
Hmm.
won before for Best Bluegrass, which again, very good on him. And I think his live one got nominated for Best Live Album or something like that coming up. But the Highway Prayers is, to my knowledge, maybe it didn't make the cut as far as release date, and maybe it'll be next year. Again, forgive me for not knowing the specifics of when that cutoff date is. I know it's sometime in mid year, late 24 before these come in.
I
Or
think it.
yeah.
I thought I read it was in the category best album made under the influence of marijuana.
It's is that the man? I'll tell you what, the competition's got to be tight. But then voting on it, nobody cares.
Yes, exactly right.
Whatever, dude. All right, yeah, it's a cool one. So yeah, yes, you did see him in concert recently. So now you what was that smell,
Yes. All right. What's going on?
Patty? You better drive home.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh Lord.
So let's go through our collections, shall we, Steve? When the
Okay.
we've talked endlessly about this, but I think we can look through. And I was surprised that I didn't have more, but I guess I really wasn't, because I don't collect
Hmm.
based on I'm going to get this album because it is a Grammy Award winner for Best Album of the Year, for Album of the Year.
Yeah.
I picked them up because I liked them, and they just happened to be a Grammy album for Album of
Sure.
the Year. So why don't you kick us off, and if we
Okay.
can start, I've got mine kind of sort of set up sequentially here.
All right. Mine's just and I used to have a lot more of them, but yeah, as you rebuild, it's just like I don't need that anymore. I
Yep.
was okay. But my very first one is actually it's in a box in the closet because I don't have my comedy out. But in
Yeah,
1960, Bob Newhart
that's
won for
right.
the Button Down Mine. And I absolutely that's one of my all-time favorite comedy albums. I mean, I can listen to that thing and I still just rolling laughter. It is
Yep.
so good. So that would actually be I do have that one. Love Bob Newhart comedy albums. But then this one, 1966, the Jetson Gilberto
Gets
came
Gilberto.
out.
Yep.
Yep. And that won the best album 1966, which probably the last time I can remember jazz popping on there. But
Yeah.
it was kind of easy listening and again appealed to an older crowd also. And so yeah.
Does that have the? I'm trying to remember if that girl from Impanena's in
Impanita.
it. Yep.
Uh-huh. Yep.
That would be why.
Exactly.
It's got a very
Uh-huh.
pop sensible feel to it.
Yes, it does. Yes, it very much does. So what's I'll let you do it. Probably you're going to go. I think I know
Well,
where your next one's going to
my
be.
first one doesn't come in until 1968, I believe,
That's
69.
right. Yep. So go
So,
ahead with
yeah,
that one.
what I got, the first one that shows up in mine is from a Beatles collection, and it's Sergeant Pepper, which I think is deserving of being on
Hmm.
that list. One of the ones that, the older ones, and it shows that they were really, I think that in this case, in the late 60s, the Beatles were much too large to ignore
Yeah.
by the Grammy
That
audience in
was a
this case.
turning point album to me.
Yes.
That was a turning point where it wasn't Frank Sinatra that, and the kids were not listening to Frank Sinatra.
No.
Parents were, and it's a huge shift to me.
It is,
Yeah.
and I going through the history. By the way, I was very. It was odd to see this, but the Beatles won for Best New Artist in 1964. Like, wow, okay, yeah, these guys have been
Yeah.
around. So what do
Yeah.
you have next? I think I'm
All
heading into
right.
the late 60s still with mine here before we
Go
get
ahead.
to
And
no
I'm not
1970.
in the late. All right. Nope. I'm not till 74. So pop on, go
74.
on
So let me go
through.
next then. Bridge Over Troubled Water. We
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier. Simon and Garfunkel. I'm not a huge Simon and Garfunkel fan, but I like
Mhm.
to go to these once in a while. So from 1970, The Bridge Over the Troubled Water. Again, the Academy or whatever they are, the Grammy folks seem to like Paul Simon. He's up there on that list of multiple wins. In fact, I've got a second Paul Simon album solo that's coming up here in the 80s. You might know what that one is, but this one, most
Yeah.
definitely, I think, The Boxer and Baby Driver, just great songs and a great album overall. So another one that I think deserving of that honor.
Yep. I don't have that one, but
Oh,
I
okay.
used to.
All right. Next.
I go 74, Stevie Wonder,
Okay.
in Intervisions. And this thing, has Too High, has Higher Ground on here. Uh, Absolutely love this album to death. Columbia Record Club.
Oh, yeah.
What got me. I mean, I bought Stevie Wonder albums, so that was definitely one. He had this in 74 and 75. He won for Fulfilling Us in the first finale. Uh, I used to have that one. I don't. But then well, you probably have 76. So I'll let you do
Well, so you
76.
can go right to Songs in the Key of Life is next, right? In that list. He did win for that
Yep.
also.
Songs for the Key of Life.
There you
Exactly.
go.
And, I mean, Stevie Wonder in the 70s could do no wrong. And every year on the Grammys, every album he had was nominated.
Yeah.
I just remember because I was watching the Grammys and go, oh, there's Stevie Wonder again. And he was constantly, every year, his stuff, it was there. But then, kind of disappeared out as music changed.
In the 80s, he got a lot more poppy and a lot less soul and Motown sound in through there as well.
Yeah.
But
And he
so
had a lot of
mine,
good funk going on.
yep. My next one kicks into 1977. So I forget which Grammy this would have been, 78-ish. But you can't
Yeah.
ignore Fleetwood Mac. And I know that's probably, you didn't even pull yours, did you? Because you knew I'd
I
have
did
one.
because I figured you'd have it. Yes.
Fleetwood Mac and Rumors, again, one of those albums that today remains on a bestseller list for a myriad of reasons. This one, I will say, I sell a copy of this in the store every other week, if not more. I'm constantly having to restock this. That's just folks like this album, and it's one of those ones that's hard not to see why, because we picked on AC/DC having like Back in Black as a greatest hits album. Rumors is pretty much the same thing. There isn't a stinker on this one as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. That it has proven itself through the test of time.
Yes, very much
And
so.
not many albums, even the ones we're showing, except for Sergeant Pepper's has. The other ones people still buy, but not like that.
Nope.
1980. I used to
Let
have
me
Billy
get
Joel's
through the 70s
52nd
then.
Street.
Hold on,
Oh, okay. Oh,
I've
you
got
got more
one.
70s.
I've
Look
got
at
one more.
that was
one
the
more
one.
70s. Billy Joel, 52nd
Yeah.
Street. And I like Billy Joel. And prior to this copy of 52nd Street, the only Joel I've ever had in my collection has been Piano Man and Glass Houses, because I really enjoy those. This I like, but I added it because it is a white label promo. As you can see, it's a little beat up with this. This is actually a radio station copy. But yeah, this one surprised me a little bit as far as winning an album of the year, because there's a couple of really good songs on here, and then others that have really not stood the test, or they've just kind of faded off.
Sometimes you wonder it's because maybe his other albums really took off and they go, oh, we missed it. And everyone's going, well, what, you guys, what's wrong with you? You guys are idiots. And then I
Yeah.
put them on. I'm sure it happens, but I used to have that. That was my very first Billy Joel album I ever bought. Just I haven't brought it back in yet. Yeah.
Very good. So you go ahead
Well,
into the 80s. Let's move into the 80s now. This is, I think,
all right.
our time to shine. There we go.
81, Christopher Cross. And I adore this album. I think it's one of the most wonderful albums. It's put together well. It sounds great. The guitar playing is incredibly good. Christopher Cross can play a guitar, and his solo is good. Michael McDonald's. I mean, there's guest stars all over this thing because he was doing session work for so many people, and they all came to help him with this. Still one of my favorite albums. And so, yeah, and it's softer rock, but it is just power packed on there. And right like the wind. Woo.
Yep. Looking back, that's one of the ones that surprised me when I was looking at the list of album of the year that did win one. I thought, okay, well, that's cool, good, and it's a good album, but I never had really realized, and I probably should have, that was a winner.
Yeah. Yep. Sure was.
I go to 86 next. Where are you?
Oh, okay. No, well, I'm going to be there. I used to have 83. I used to have Total 4. That was one. I remember buying that. I had it. But Africa, I haven't rebought it because Africa, I loved Africa when it came out, but it's just been beat I guess if we did a video, songs that have been beat to death, Let's
That's
put
what.
Africa there from
Yep.
Toto. Okay. Oh my God. So I haven't bought it, but it was a really good album.
Yep.
But 86, yes, I would agree. Oh, I actually did pull it. Go ahead. Show yours.
Paul Simon, Graceland. Back to Paul Simon. This is a great album. I do.
Yes.
I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy this record, and if only because it was so much different at the time. I think due solely to the inclusion of Ladysmith Black Mambazo on here
Hmm.
as guest artists on Graceland. But some of the just awesome music on here outside of Graceland. But Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes and You Can Call Me Al, just fun stuff. And I think another big win, deservedly so for Paul Simon on the solo side.
Yeah, it still sounds fresh. It sounds
Yep.
exciting. Though Malcolm McLaren was down in South Africa 3 years before Paul Simon recording those artists down there, and but he did not win a Grammy for
Nope.
whatever reason.
And neither did Stuart Copeland for his album
Yes,
Across Africa
he
as
went
well.
down
So,
there. But Simon put it all first off, big name.
yep.
So that helps. And it just well produced, but it's not just he goes all over the place. He has Zydeco in there. Well, hey, okay.
So I kick up
All
to
right.
87 on my next one. Where are you?
I'm at 86. I was surprised I had this. Someone must have sent this to me after the flood. But it's not a bad album. No, Phil Collins.
Oh yeah, yep.
No Jacket Required. It's my only Phil Collins album. I don't mind Phil Collins. I just don't necessarily listen to him that much. He's a good greatest hits one for me.
Yep.
I could be perfectly happy with that. But someone sent this to me. It did win the Grammy, so it has Susu Studio on here, and the album's very good. So it's all good. Just that's it for me and Phil Collins.
That's it. Well, it's like this for me. The next one, this is for me and you too. And the Joshua Tree, which came out in 1987. This,
Yep.
yeah, you've got one too. This was a recent addition to my collection. I've had this come through the store several times, and I finally decided I'm going to give this another shot. I was not the biggest U2 fan after their initial hit, where they were a little more edgier in their earlier stuff. But this one, I got to admit, that Joshua Tree is kind of growing on me, and it is a good album.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
got
one of
into
the
them
albums of the year.
when that War album came out and MTV was putting all those YouTube videos from War. I mean,
Yep.
I got into them big time, and through the 80s, huge, through the 90s, big, till about 2005.
Speaking of the 90s, my next one isn't until the mid. So if you have any more 80s or early 90s you want to kick through here, that
I
are
have
albums of the year?
nothing. I have nothing until the aughts.
Really?
I
Okay.
missed the 90s.
Oh my. Well, how about this? Alanis Morissette and Jagged Little Pill. And I remember when this came out, compact disc only in 1995. And we did, I've mentioned before that there were very few compact discs that I owned in that era. This was one of them. And so when they finally got around to reissuing these on vinyl, I snagged one. But it's another one of those that it was full of angst, very, I think indicative of the 90s. Just some great music that came out for this. But, All I Really Want You Ought to Know are songs that just stand out to this day. And, you get like Ironic and Knock the Doctor, but Right Through You, all great stuff from Alanis Morissette on this one. And so much so, I think we own like an acoustic version of this album also, which it does not do it justice because the whole purpose of this album was driving, heavy guitar, angry lyrics. And then to hear an acoustic version of You Ought to Know. No, it doesn't work for me. But this one on its own in 95 was great and still is.
I wound up buying a greatest hits of her to get those good songs off of theirs, plus the other one. So that's why I didn't buy that one. But I had that CD, great CD. And, in the 90s, I probably had CDs for all the Grammys, but now I don't have CDs. So I would almost bet 2002 you have one.
Which one's that?
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yep.
There you go. I can't find mine.
That.
It's still here somewhere. Yes, I got it.
This, to be a soundtrack and to be a bluegrass soundtrack and country music, was tremendously interesting that this won Album of the Year. I would not have seen that coming. I'm glad it did because I enjoy the movie tremendously. We've talked about that. One of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I play this a lot. It's a fun one to have.
Yeah. Yeah, the soundtrack for The Bodyguard made it, but
Yep.
I don't have any Whitney
No.
Houston. So, yeah. 2004, I used to have it, but I don't anymore. I gotta get it back. Outcast Speaker Box
Okay.
and Love Love Before It. I really like that one, but again, I don't have it. I go into 2007. You have something before
Nope.
that?
I'm not until 2012 next up.
Yep. All right, so 2007, Dixie Chicks.
Okay.
And the Taking the Long Way Back, which so many conservatives hated because they were, I believe this was the one where they were just kind of going about the war and everything. And everyone was really upset. I think this was the album, maybe not. Oh well, fact checkers,
Yep.
take charge here. But it was kind of, they had been kind of beat down. Actually, I think the George Bush album was before that. Maybe this was the one they're coming back to say, listen, we're still here and we're not backing down. And they're still called Dixie Chicks. So yeah, I really love this album. I just think it's a beautiful album. It was very, very well done. I like the Dixie Chicks. But I don't have a lot of their stuff, and I'd like to get more of it. So yeah, 2007, and then 2009, one of my all-time favorite albums came out. Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, Raising Sand. Uh, I was lucky to see these guys at concert over at Red Rocks a few years back. It's just, these two, they do so good together. I mean, it's just, they just, their voices meld well. And Robert Plant had Ted learn how to sing, how to sing harmonies because he never had to sing harmonies. He was
Yep.
always the lead, but he had to learn. And this is one of my, this thing came out. I played it so much. I loved it.
Very cool.
Okay. The next one we're both in agreement on.
What you
That's
got?
you have it too. 2015, right?
Back. Well, let me back one up.
Well,
We'll
you
come
got
back to
one
that.
before
I've
that.
got one in between.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
2012, Mumford and Sons. Now, this Mumford and Sons was a big, big favorite of my daughter's when she was younger, and I actually went with her to a concert at Pine Knob to see Mumford and Sons. And I got to admit, these guys kind of bridge that indie, almost bluegrass feel
Hmm.
that I think really led the way to my affinity for Billy Strings nowadays, coming from Oh Brother. But yeah, Mumford and Sons Babel from 2012. Did I say? I think it is. Great song. One of my favorites on here is a song called "Lover." Lover of the Light. I've got to get that one right in through here. It's a favorite. I can't even remember the name, obviously, but Babel's on here. This is just it's a good, solid album, and happy to have that in the collection because my
Yeah.
daughter was such a fan of it. But yes, so wrapping things, I think both of us, or unless you have one after this,
I got one more.
one more. But yeah,
Yeah.
2014, Beck.
Mm,
What do you
yeah.
have there?
2000 Grammy for 2015. It came out in
Okay. So
2014.
Beck and
2000.
Morning Phase. I remember when this came out. I'd been following Beck for a while, obviously with his earlier, almost punkish, weird stuff.
Yeah.
Just he's such a eclectic artist that the albums all seem to have this different flavor. You've got a disco-y one, you've got an indie one, you've got punks ones. This one was his mellow one. And Morning Phase, I do remember when this came out. I was teaching, but I was still working radio here and there. And I said, this album will win a Grammy. But I didn't watch the Grammys. But lo and behold, it did. I think this was the one, too, where he was interrupted on stage by Kanye saying, hold on, I'm going to let you finish, whatever the case. But Beck deserved it. This is I don't go to this often because this is one of those albums you put on to relax, to chill
Hmm.
out and just enjoy. Hard as a Drum is on here, and Blackbird Chain are just beautiful songs. The entire album, I think, is it's a beautiful piece of work by Beck.
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, you just chill out to that thing
Yep.
and excellent stuff. Well, my final one came from the 2018 Grammys. It's Casey Musgraves.
Oh, there we go.
And I have a couple of those early Casey Musgraves, and I absolutely love them. This one, she took less country, began going more toward the pop route.
That's Golden
And
Hour, right?
yeah, Golden Hour really went to the pop route. Here
Yep.
she was starting to move that way with Slow Burn, Space Cowboy. But I love this album. I thought it was really good. You know, after Flood, this was one of my first ones I actually brought back in because I like her voice. And I didn't buy that latest one, which I think is up for one of the billions of Grammys. So yeah.
So overall, Steve, I think I said earlier I was surprised that I only had 10 Album of the Year award winners in my collection, but now in having gone through them sequentially like that, I feel that's a good representation of a time frame, with the exception of the 50s. You know, me picking up with Sgt. Pepper in the mid 60s and all the way through to Beck. For me, I think it's well balanced. But as I said earlier, I don't pick the albums for my collection based on whether or not they've won an award. I pick them because they're things that I enjoy and things that I want to have in my collection.
You know, though, you could have doubled your Grammy amount of Grammy albums you had if you were a Taylor Swift completist.
If I were, I would be completely broke, I think. I know folks have to as well, but that'd be a tough one to keep because I don't think she's done yet. It'll be interesting to see where
No.
things go with the 25 Grammys,
Mhm.
but not interesting enough for me to watch, apparently. I'll read the news after the fact. How's that?
Exactly. Yeah. With CDs, I had a whole lot more Grammy stuff. There was
Yep.
no, and as I mentioned, I loved watching them, but through the new century, I'm just not up to date with it enough. And there are some great performances, but you watch and go, I don't know who that is. And it's not, you don't have that same passion when when you know when an artist. So
Yep.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's more exciting because that's some old fogies coming up there. We go, I know that group. Yeah.
Don't get me started on the Hall of Fame. That's a whole nother bucket of worms we're going to get into. But very curious what you folks think. And we mentioned earlier too that had we gone off into the sub genres, the sub awards like best hard rock or best bluegrass, I think we do a lot better with a lot of those, especially throughout the 80s and 70s. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff in there that are in our collections that got the other sides of the awards. But as
Yeah.
far as the album of the year, that's supposed to be the pinnacle. This is the best of the best of the best. And I think they do okay with what they're picking, but again, the interest isn't there for me until after the fact.
Next week, we're doing Best Tape Splicer Grammy, the winners of the best
All
tapes for
right.
for splicing.
Best,
So
best use of cowbell.
yes. It's those subgenres that really bring excitement to the whole thing that we need to talk about.
We'll get in there. So, folks, please check us out and chime in if you will. Fact check us, correct us, because I think that there's probably some stuff that we're not getting correct absolutely in here, but that's all right because we're just two guys talking about records. I never said we were experts.
Two old guys talking about records, so don't rely on the memory, man. We're not taking Prevagen.
So, until next week, my name is Jim and I own a record store.
I'm Steve. Yeah,
Let it kick
that's
in.
it.
There we go.
I'm a record collector.
Have a great week, Steve. We'll talk to you later.
See you, Jim. Bye, everyone.